Hey, family, friends. I want to speak on really the topic of understanding. I know I touched on it in the past and spoke on it, but I really feel like it needs to be looked at in depth. And I believe it's something that we as Christians can really operate in. That's really where grace for others comes from. God has grace for us. And, I believe that if it wasn't for grace, then none of us would survive. But the fact that God has understanding for our situation, with the fact that He kept our sin at bay until it was dealt with. He waited for Jesus to come and our sin to be placed upon Him, for sin to be dealt with. And it says that, I believe, in Romans, that it was for grace that God did this. If God was such an unmerciful God, the first sign of disobedience and rebellion, He would have just killed us. And there would be no one else. There would be no one left. None of us would be standing. But it's for grace that God has understanding for our situation, because Jesus walked in understanding. He walked as a human. So He's able to sympathize with what we're going through. So, like I said, I had spoke on understanding in the past, and, what can help us to move in that direction as Christians? Instead of lashing out in anger at the mishaps of a brother or sister, we can have understanding. Or not even a brother or sister, just somebody in the world. In my book, Love One Another, I really speak on understanding. Because it's with understanding that we could be slow to anger. And we can be abounding in love. We can be patient with our brothers and sisters. And in that, we can show God's love. So if God will allow, I would ask that He would speak, to my mind about different instances of understanding, of, my own examples in my own life that I have seen, that I could share with you, that could help you. And do I have it perfected? Nope. Because I still operate in, at times a lack of love, and it's something God's going to help me with. But He's helping me slowly because I'm slow. So, as I was driving this morning, taking the kids to school, and this is just a poor example, but as I was driving, I got up to a certain point in the town, and there was this truck that was up like 4 cars up, and he was driving slow. And, that can annoy anybody, because here they're going less than the speed limit. Now, I have seen in the past the elderly going that slow. So at first, I could have become potentially annoyed if I went through with that annoyance. I could have thought, gee, why is this person taking so long? But then understanding kicks in. God helps us to see the possible scenario of what's going on with them. Now, it could have been somebody that's elderly. That seems to fit, because the elderly drive slow. When you get to a certain age, I believe, your reaction time slows up. So they want to be cautious. I remember my 90-year-old aunt driving, and she was so short that she had to look through the steering wheel in order to see outside, in front of her in the car. And it got to the point to where she just couldn't drive anymore. She had to sit on top of a phone book, or a couple of phone books, in order to see over the steering wheel. And it got to the point to where she just ended up accidentally putting the gear in reverse and going through the back of the garage. And, that's, I guess, when you get to a certain age, you can't operate a vehicle like you used to. It's sad, but for the safety of those around them, it has to happen. So, with that person in the truck, could have been elderly. What other scenarios could have been why this person was going slow? Well, maybe they were on their phone. They were looking at text messages, which is a hazard. Maybe they're sick. Heaven forbid, maybe they have a sickness that's causing them to go that slow. What other scenarios can you think of why somebody would go slow? Maybe they're irritated with the person behind them. Maybe that person's tailgating them. My sister did that one time. I was a kid, and this was in the late 80s. And this person was tailgating my sister while she was driving. So my sister slowed down to 5 miles an hour. And if I remember correctly, when she stopped at a red light, that person behind her got out and was yelling at her. So she rolled up her window. So, it could be a reason why the person was going slow. Maybe the person behind them was tailgating. Who knows? But understanding helps us to see the situation even deeper. And so when we can go through a possible scenario of why this person's behaving the way they are, then we can have grace for their situation. We'll be slow to anger. We won't be as angry. Another example is a mechanic that we brought our car to. And they currently have the car, and it's been 3 weeks. Now, somebody could be impatient and be like, man, I want my car back. And even though we want our car back, we can understand with the fact that if there are only 2 mechanics working on it, and they have all these customers, it helps us to be understanding the fact that, they can't work on it as much as they probably would like. So they have to bring the car in, work on it a little bit, take it out, put another one in until the problem is, fixed, because they can't work on it constantly because they have other people they're working on. So when we can acknowledge the fact that there are only 2 mechanics in there, we're not going to be as angry as we would without understanding. So those are 2 examples. And so when we can operate in understanding, we can look at those around us. God helps us to see deeper in the situation, of why a person's behaving as they are. And when we can come up with a possible scenario, then we're not going to be as angry. We're going to be working through grace and through love. And I honestly believe that's how Jesus operated when he was on earth. He didn't lash out like the Pharisees did at people. He had understanding. I believe when he ministered, God revealed to him, what was going on in each person's life. And so when God can reveal that, we're not going to be operating in the flesh. We're operating in the Spirit because we're taking our time to hear him and are doing what he wants us to do. So as of now, I'm I'm about to head home because I went to the park. I walked around a little bit, and I'm gonna hopefully go home, try to go back to sleep a little bit if I can. If not, then I don't. But I just wanted to share that bit of information with you. You know, I mean, in what way can you walk in understanding with those around you? Can you start doing such? Because I believe that really it helps us to walk in love for our fellow man. So I wanted to end here. I didn't come up with any more examples because none has come to my mind. But I believe those two are beneficial to help. So just ask God, if you haven't already started walking in understanding, ask God to help you. You know, ask Him to show you in, possible scenarios with each example that you may see. And I believe that's just a step closer to love. So I'm going to end it here. Thank you for taking the time to watch.